All right, and we're live, guys. Welcome, everyone. Welcome who's joining us for the after party tonight on Monday, December 5th at 7. We've got the after party with Dane Maxwell and Andrew Warner from Mixergy. After party tonight, Monday, December 5th at 7. Streaming over here. Welcome. So we've got a little bit of a delay. Welcome, guys. Andrew, thanks for coming on, man. I think you're muted.
No, there we go. Thanks for having me on. What makes this a party? Because I got whiskey right there. You guys know it.
Do you really?
I have whiskey and I also have soda.
Diet Dr. Pepper.
My party drink right there.
Diet Dr. Pepper. It looks like
yeah, dude. I was up at 2 a.m. and I tried to get myself to go back to sleep. And then at 3, I said, why am I forcing myself to go back to sleep? There's something on my mind. I should just go get up and work. And so I got up at 3 a.m. and I was working like a maniac until like 5:30. Then I got another hour of sleep before the baby woke me up.
This is last night?
Last night.
This is fascinating. I woke up at 2 a.m. last night and I was up till 4, but I didn't go to work. I just tried to fall back asleep and I read for a little bit. What'd you do?
I usually would do that, but here's the thing. This company invited me in to talk basically about the kind of stuff that you guys talk about, what we're doing at the foundation. And I had all these ideas for how to make the conversation, even though it's just a casual conversation, all their employees coming in to understand how to create a great product. Even though it was just casual, I just wanted to kill it. I wanted to kill it in a very casual way. I wanted to have like my iPad full of all these images and stories and screenshots so that I can kind of bring it up in a casual way, but also I knew that every inch of it was going to be worked on. And so I got up and I went through the work just one more time to really make sure that it was full of useful information that would actually change the way that they do business, but also felt casual enough that they could feel comfortable.
How'd it go?
It was great. It was fantastic. It was fantastic. This whole group of people, everyone, the engineers, actually all they have is engineers. Bunch of engineers sitting around talking about what to do to make a better product. And it wasn't about how to code better. It was about how to understand the problems that their customers have. It was about how everyone in the company could, in one way or the other, understand what their end customers are feeling, what their end customers are going through, and more specifically, the pain, the deep pain that they had. So I got so lit up by that. And if I'm doing something, I really want to do it well. And I got up and didn't go to sleep until I knew I could kill it, until I knew I could do it really well.
Why do you do this typically when you do talks and stuff? Like getting to that point of almost like obsession to where every detail is in?
Oh yeah. Actually, when it comes to talks, yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I'd like is to have more of a casual conversation, casual attitude like you guys have. And I work on that, but I can't. To some degree, and this is like me coming in here without notes, without sweating, like, give me an outline, let's do a pre-interview, right? This is me trying to just like chill out a little bit in life and try to get some of your vibes because I feel like I need some of that. But yeah, in general, I do. I sweat it to the millionth degree.
Fascinating. I'm similar because I can if I'm talking, I need to have notes and stuff prepared. If I'm interviewing, I'm fine with winging it. Dane, you seem like you can just wing it whenever you want to.
I may be evolving more to your guys' side of the coin. Andrew, I'm actually, I don't know if I have questions about your approach and things, but I think they're kind of off topic from the people that are listening. So I'm more geared to ask a little bit, Andrew. I guess I want to say I feel pretty excited to hear that you're getting engineers that are starting to care about the emotional realm, the compassionate realm. Engineers are turning on care. They're turning on compassion. And it seems like it's motivated from a really good place to do good and not just so they can prove themselves or sell a product or make a lot of money. It sounds like the group you were with was making strides and evolving.
It's hard to ignore it when you see that the data is there. When I'm telling them stories about people whose companies failed, and then suddenly they figure this one thing out, how to understand what their customers are going through, that deep pain, and the whole company turns around. It's not like some company you never heard of. It's a company you know. It's a company you admire, and you realize that's the turning point. You can't not care about that. Even if you're a robot, you have to say, that's good input. That actually makes a lot of sense.
What was the story you told them?
So I gave them 6 different stories. I'll tell you the first one. It's about this guy, Evan and Walker, two Mixergy fans who they went to work. They went to school and they looked at the job site in school and it was just awful. You know how bad Craigslist is for jobs? It's just a bunch of links. This thing was even more complicated than it needed to be, and it was worse than Craigslist. And so they said, you know what? We're doers. We can actually create a better job site for our school. And so they built it and they presented it to the school and they presented it to students and they got in the Boston Herald and a lot of other newspapers, and they really put effort into it, and they succeeded in many ways more than most people, but the thing just failed. Nobody used Jobsol. I'm talking about it right now. There's not a single person, not Bob, not Sally, not Manish, not Pamela, none of you guys, not Graham Cullen even. None of you guys have ever used Jobsol. No way. And I asked them why, because I wanted to figure out, why did this thing fail? And they said, you know, most students in college just want a quick job. They don't care about it being the perfect job. They don't need a good search feature to make sure that it's the right one. They're not doing this for the rest of their lives. They're doing it for a few hours after school at $12 an hour. They didn't have a big enough problem with the school's job search site to care about this. So I said to them, what'd you guys do next? I said, well, we went to a local bar, which I completely understand. And the dive bar was actually closing down. This is the dive bar that everybody loved. Tran, you would have loved it too, especially if you found out about it before you were 21, because this place, from what I saw on Yelp, allowed people in underage. And so people loved it, but the school didn't. And so the school was shutting it down. And you could imagine, if you have your favorite dive bar and the school's shutting it down, you're pissed, but the school doesn't care. They have bigger problems than your favorite dive bar. And so the students were pissed. Nobody cared. And so Evan and Walker created these t-shirts that basically said, save the dive bar. And they started selling it. Sold. I mean, they made more money with that than Jobsol, a freaking t-shirt. What is it, 1800 technology, 1700? No, maybe 1900s technology, really old. And they actually sold it. And I asked them why. I said, well, people were upset. I said, did you give any of the money to the dive bar? And they said, no. I said, did you save the dive bar? And they said, no, we didn't save the dive bar. It closed down and probably deserved to. I said, so why? Why did people give you money knowing that you weren't giving it to the dive bar? And they said, look, people were upset. Nobody cared. Nobody even listened. We gave them an outlet to show that we cared. We gave them an outlet to show that they cared that this place was taken away from them. That's why they bought. If you find a pain that's big enough that people experience, even if you don't fully solve it, and we're going to try to solve it, right? Tran's not in here to just like soothe people. Steven, or is it Stefan? Steven is not there. Kirill, I'm looking at who's in there. Doug, none of us, Nathan Siegel, I know not you, none of us are looking to just listen to someone's pain. But frankly, if you just show you understand it the way these guys did, then people will buy, people will gravitate towards you, people will be attracted to what you got. Anyway, ask them what they did next, because if that's the end of the story, then it's not a big enough story to be on Mixergy. And so they said, you know, the way we sold our t-shirts was we created this landing page that let people buy the t-shirt before we made it. So think about it. All these clubs on campus, whenever they sell t-shirts, they buy a bunch of smalls, they buy a bunch of mediums, they buy a bunch of large, right? Andy, you know this. If you buy too many smalls, right, and a large guy comes in, you can't sell him a small. If you don't have enough large, the guy who came in to buy large, you've lost his sale, right? So you lose money if you underestimate, you lose money if you overestimate. These guys were losing money at these little clubs, and every dollar mattered to a college student. Suddenly, Evan and Walker came in with this page where people bought shirts beforehand, where they picked their size beforehand, where they made sales before they actually created the t-shirts. Boom, this thing took off. All the other clubs wanted it. It took off to the point where this shirt company, many of us know it, it's called Teespring. It did over $100 million 2015, 2016 even more. They expanded beyond t-shirts. Yeah.
$100 million?
$100 million. You'd think that the t-shirt business had already been exhausted. But no, these guys came up with a new solution for it. So that's the kind of story where you hear that and you say, I got to understand people's pain. Even if you don't care about people, you have to at least care about the numbers there. And frankly, a lot of us do care about people.
Andrew,
so, yeah.
When did you start caring about this concept? When did this start making sense to you, and when did it click? Because I think it's a thing that happens to entrepreneurs where it shifts, where it's like, oh, I just focus on helping people solve the pain that they're experiencing. When did that shift for you?
It didn't happen fast enough. I kept hearing people talk about that in interviews, and I just didn't pay attention to it because I kept thinking, come on, really, you care more about money. Come on, really, there's like some goal that you're hitting, something. And when people didn't give it to me, I thought maybe they were lying. I thought maybe they were hiding something, but it's true. I see it. I see the way they spend time. I see the impact it had on me. I see the impact it had on products that I use. I see what it did for my audience. People who ran with it ended up doing really well, like Evan and Walker. By the way, if this is a party, I am cracking open this Dr. Pepper. Dane, are you just drinking water? You're still at the monastery.
No, I'm not still at the monastery, but I'm just drinking water, yeah. The vocal cord diet is pretty strict. I could never just put in your mouth in my mouth.
You could never drink it.
Yeah, no.
Oh, look at me. I'm such a devil, dude.
Never drink Dr. Pepper?
Oh, no way, man. Just read the first 3 ingredients for me, Andrew. No, I think, one of the things that you mentioned was, do you want to read
carbonated water? That's not unhealthy.
Carbonated is pretty bad for your vocal cords. What else?
Oh, really?
Yeah. First ingredient. So one thing you mentioned, find the pain is often heard, but I really like the distinction you meant on that people were upset. And I really like that word. That word upset seems to really fit. Is that a distinction that you've heard a lot, Andrew, in terms of describing pain?
Yeah. This super deep pain. This real. I'll give you an example. One of my listeners is a guy named Wade Foster. He said he wanted to connect 2 different apps together. And I had a big problem with that, right? People would buy from me on PayPal and I couldn't get their data into my CRM. I couldn't get their data into HighRise, which I used at the time, right? And that sucks. You want to know the names of the people who buy from you. You want their email addresses. I wanted them on my phone. I couldn't do it. Couldn't piece it together. I complained online. Wade said, hey, Andrew, I think I could solve it for you. He created Zapier to solve it for me and many other people. Before he created it, there was If This Then That, a free product that linked up other apps, but they were going consumer. And they never figured out where the money was. In fact, there's a Fast Company article about them a few days ago about how they finally might have a solution to making money. And I looked at the use case. The use case in the article was a BMW owner, no kidding, coming home, and he wants the garage to automatically open up. And before he gets in the house, he wants his Nest thermostat to go up a little bit so the house is warm, the temperature is comfortable. And he wants the lights turned on. And If This Then That will solve that. Now, is that a cool thing? Absolutely. Would I like it if the lights were on and I didn't have to go and hit the light switch at home? Absolutely. Right? But is it a deep pain? Did anyone ever wake up saying, damn it, I have to drive home and then hit the light switch? I can't do that. That stinks. Somebody better sell me a t-shirt about how much that stinks. Right? That's why If This Then That is struggling to make money, where Wade's company is doing $10 million a year, recurring revenue, profitable company, and still growing, not sacrificing it, not sacrificing growth because they want to be profitable. That's a huge difference, that pain.
Can you describe, Andrew, the feeling of upset you had about that issue?
Yeah, it was so bad that I complained online. It was so bad that I felt lost, like I was letting down my customers. It was so bad that I felt blinded to the world around me. Like, this was all the people who bought. I posted it online. I still have a link to that post where I said, can somebody help me solve this?
So for those of you guys listening, if you're taking notes, the first thing is you would want to ask people, what are they upset about? Another question you might want to ask is, what do you find yourself complaining about, if you ever complain online? What is so upsetting that it causes you to lose your sense of reality and you just get tunnel vision on this issue? It's that upsetting for you. Those could be questions you could go out and ask and probably have a pretty interesting conversation with people. And I like those distinctions. That sounds, I mean, this sounds kind of cheesy, but that sounds pretty upsetting. Like, seriously upsetting.
Yeah. There are lots of little issues like that you have as a business if you can't get data from one place to another.
And is the guy that made Zapier, is he a developer?
Actually, I don't know if Wade himself is a developer.
Yeah, so I wonder, how many people scrolled that tweet that didn't take action on that tweet that now don't have a $10 million a year company because they didn't look at your tweet and make one small decision.
You know what, Dane? If he was a developer, he was a pretty bad developer with that first version. The first version that he showed me, I couldn't figure out for myself. I said, Wade.
You couldn't figure out for yourself?
I couldn't. He actually did a screen share with me over Skype. And I said, well, here's the category I need. And goes, oh, here's the category's right there. I go, what do you mean right there? All I see is a number. He goes, well, we couldn't actually get the names out of this other tool in here. So we have the numbers, but trust me, it's okay. And I said, okay, I trust you. You know why? It was such a bad problem that I would have done anything to solve it, including just get on the phone with him to use a piece of software, like be held by the hand. That's a major problem.
That's a really exciting distinction. I think that's one of the unspoken ones that helped me sell products when I had no idea what I was doing, when my products were kind of crappy, was the person was in so much pain. You know, a lot of times people will ask, well, how did you get around not having credibility? How did you get like people to believe you when you were 22? It's like, well, I picked a problem that was so painful, they didn't care who I was.
Yeah, right.
Their pain solved.
Right. Anyone out there, Bob, Mark, Joe, Cheryl, anyone at all out there who has some current pain or had a pain that software solved, even if it wasn't perfect? Could you relate to this on any level? In fact, if you list one of the pain points, maybe somebody here will actually solve it for you. Even if it's bad, as bad first version, I bet you'll be happy. Try it out with me.
I'm curious. Why do you think so many starting entrepreneurs either seem to resist this or it doesn't click with them? And Dan, I'm curious if you have thoughts on this too. Why didn't you believe this in the beginning? Why did it take so long for it to really land?
For me, it just felt a little touchy-feely. It felt a little hard. You know what? The truth is that just getting on the phone and talking to people at all is pretty difficult. And so even when I found out about it, even when I knew it, I was a little resistant to it. I actually came out to you guys at the foundation, did, I don't know, was it called a graduation? It was something in Vegas. And I loved it.
That was a legitimate party.
It was a real one.
A real what?
Real party. Not just
a grill party. Oh yeah, not one of these like webcam parties.
Yeah. I think Rolling Stones were like in the next suite down from the place we had or something.
I remember talking to people there. Like I took an Uber back to my flight with someone from there, and I talked to people privately at the event, and I asked them about it, and they talked about how tough it was to actually make phone calls, how tough it was to actually to talk to people and ask them questions and understand what they're going through. It's a goofy thing to admit that it's tough, but it is a little tough. And I think one of the reasons why they were able to do it is because there were other people together doing it. And so they were able to talk to someone else and say, here's my number for the day. Here's my number for the week. Here's what I'm trying to do. It helps to have that. I just kind of figured it out because of my interviews, and I didn't have somebody else to talk it through with and go over it with and see that they also think that it's a little tough or goofy, or hear that they're also coming up with excuses, and it's easier to recognize other people's excuses than my own.
Totally. It's fascinating to get on the phone with somebody and to tell them that you care about their problems.
Mm-hmm.
It seems awkward at some level. And it seems strange to me that it's strange to care about people's problems and to want them to help them with it.
Well, and the thing that would come up then is, Andy, is like, well, yeah, like you care about them to charge them a price to make a profit, you know, and they like try to like dirty up the care a little bit. And the thing is, you can still care about people and charge a price.
Yeah, I think actually you care about people more when you charge something. And I know that sounds like disingenuous, self-motivated, but it's true. You can't really take care of people for a long time unless you charge something. No restaurant can really do good work on a day-to-day basis and be there for you next time if they don't charge. One of my favorite restaurants is Millennium in Oakland. They don't charge. They won't be around there for me next week. Look, accountability. I've been in business 12 years and it was still scary to cold call when I did the foundation. Yeah. Or is it accountability? I wonder who that is. Even for me, I love sales calls. I do. I love calling people and trying to get them to buy. I love even being turned down. I will eat no's for breakfast. But there's something about calling someone up without that agenda, which just like, help me, tell me. I feel a little needy. But you need to. The best entrepreneurs I've interviewed have done that. We're talking about guys like Emmett Shear, one of the best entrepreneurs I ever interviewed, sold his company for $1 billion to Amazon. He got on the phone with his potential customers, with his users, and asked them that question. Sounds very needy until you do it. But he basically said, what are you guys trying to do? They were trying to broadcast themselves playing video games. So why are you doing it? Turns out they were trying to actually make a living broadcasting themselves playing video games. It's a whole business now. And so he asked them, what's getting in your way? And he understood what was getting in their way. And he solved them, each one of these little problems, one at a time, getting back on the phone with them. I said, why did you have to do it yourself? I said, dude, you have money. You raised tons of money. People would intern for you. They knew his co-founder, Justin Kahn. He was a celebrity in the tech space. He could have gotten tons of interns to do it for free. He said, you got to do it yourself to really understand. You have to do it yourself to understand what they're going through. Yeah, William, I do eat nose for breakfast. I love it.
It's not something that you generally ever regret. I generally ever regret. Kind of maybe akin to working out. You know, maybe 2 weeks to get the momentum of working out, and then you're in the flow of working out, and then you don't really regret when you're done. That's how I view talking to customers. No matter how often I do it, it's a pretty close analogy. This is the guy that created Twitch.
Twitch, yeah, Twitch TV.
What other metaphors, anecdotes, stories do you have for folks that might be like Evan, that might be like Twitch, that just about the importance and the ease that can kind of fall into your world, like how business can kind of start to feel like a little bit of ease in business?
I got one for you for one of the people who was part of this summit, Rob Walling. Rob Walling created Drip initially as this little pop-up that came up on the bottom left or the bottom right side of your screen that said, do you want this whatever report? Enter your email address to get it. And people put it on their sites, and then they canceled. And he was selling it for $50 a month, and people said to him, you know, if you sold it for 10 or 15, I might pay, but for 50, nah. And so he said, I don't want to play in that space. I don't want to play in the small world. I want to play in the big leagues where there's real money that I could actually invest in this business and make it grow. And so he started calling people up to understand why they were canceling, what they'd want, what they were going through. And it turns out a lot of people who brag about how much they love Infusionsoft, and I'm an Infusionsoft customer. His customers were Infusionsoft customers. They were using Drip to collect email addresses and send it to Infusionsoft. Turns out a lot of them actually hated Infusionsoft. It was too complicated, and it still is. You get all these different like lines going from here to there. And if somebody clicks this button, then this happens, and that button, then that happens. And before you know it, you've got all these different if-then statements that you can't keep track of it. And his customer said, we're going crazy doing this. And he said, well, if I create a solution, actually, he didn't even say that. They said, why don't you create a solution for that? Create something simple. And he kept saying, no, I don't want to do it. It's too tough. I want to keep my business small. I don't want to create something on the level of Infusionsoft. These guys raised, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars in Infusionsoft. There are billions of dollars that have gone into these email software companies. But he was struggling, and people had this problem. He said, fine, let's lean into this. And he started coding it up. He hired a developer he found online. The two of them worked on this business. And he did so well with it that he sold it for a number that he won't disclose, but it was a life-changing amount of money to Lead Pages. And now he gets shares in Lead Pages. He's got cash. It's tremendous, tremendous success and a huge change from pushing that boulder up the hill that he was doing before he understood that big pain.
So my favorite part about interviewing Rob was the first time I'd gotten to meet and chat with Rob. And I asked him how he got started in entrepreneurship, and he started when he was young selling stuff because he wanted to buy comic books. That was the thing. And then at the end of the interview, I asked him, I said, all right, so you've just sold Drip for a life-changing amount of money. What are you going to do with the money? And he's investing his money in comic books.
Comic books?
Yeah. Like cool collector's item comic books that he's going off and buying now, just like he did when he was in 3rd grade. And I thought that was just really, really magical.
I get that. I also know that he's investing in some startups too, like LeadFuse, which is a good company, and others. Comic books. It's so weird what people get excited about. It used to be that people would get excited about a car. I remember this guy who I competed with, actually we're friends, but we also were in the same space. He sold his company and he bought a car. He was so freaking excited.
What company were you competing with?
I won't say who it is just in case I say something about him, because I really love him as a human being. We're good friends. We were in very similar space. Close enough that I was at his house. I saw the car he got, and I remember how excited he was about the car. But to me, it was just ho-hum. Just doesn't move me. It's more like the kind of thing that Rob is doing that moves me, that you get to spend money on stuff that you personally care about and would seem a little goofy to the rest of the world. Let's see what people are saying here. Aniko, I love cold calls. They are so much fun for me. I train hundreds of people on how to do it. I own my call center. Oh, you own your own call center. Of course you love cold calls. But you know what? I got to say this, that once you get into cold calls, you feel like a superhuman, because in a way you are, because no matter what happens to the economy, no matter what happens in your life, no matter how badly you screw up, if you can work a phone and get somebody to talk to you and buy from you, you can rebuild your life from scratch and rebuild that empire. And I actually think that making these kinds of calls takes more guts than making a sale. If you could do either one of them, you end up with the world at your fingertips, because you could do anything. There aren't a lot of superpowers in the world. I'd rather have that instead of flying. Now, Rob Walling would probably want to fly. At the party, is it inappropriate if I drink?
No, go for it.
Dan, are you going to judge me?
I will not judge you.
No.
Okay. A bunch of different whiskeys here. This one, actually, I don't know what this one is. Let's see if this is, does anyone know this? Let's see if it's a PD drink. PD whiskeys are my favorite. Let me ask you guys this. You guys made some money. You guys got some scratch. What's the best thing that you were able to do because you had money? Is that inappropriate to ask here?
Yeah.
What is it?
No, it's a good question. Well, so as Andy's thinking, the thing that's really important to mention with Rob and Drip is very, 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 very important. I think I want to stress for people to hear, and I think I'll probably say it to you, and you'll probably still ignore it. And it's critical, very critical. And it's that Rob resisted what his customers wanted. And so he kept pushing a boulder uphill. And then it was finally when he just started, he's pushing up a hill. And then he's like, you know what? This is way too tiring. Poof, let go. Poof, he just rolls down the hill with his customer, and he ends up building it. And he gets a life-changing sum of money. 50 Cent was apparently rapping about everything that he wanted to rap about, and he wasn't doing anything with it. He finally just started making rap songs that people wanted, and then he exploded, pushing a boulder uphill, rolling downhill. Clay Collins, when he built lead pages, back in the day, back when Andy and I were launching the foundation, he was giving out lead page templates. And Andy and I used them because we had tech experience to install them. But Clay said he was giving out these free landing page templates. And his customers were like, well, how do you set up servers? And like, how do you do all this? And Clay said he was upset. He's like, dude, I'm giving you guys free templates. What do you guys want from me? And then all of a sudden Clay's like, wait a second, I'm going to stop resisting what my customers, they need help with servers, they need help with this. Well, why don't I just create lead pages then? So you've got this thing where you're pushing a boulder uphill, and you could just let go and start talking to people about what they want. And if you can resist nothing and just welcome what they're saying and follow that flow, which is so challenging to do. And Andy, you also mentioned, you asked what my thoughts were on why this is so challenging. I think the default for the way the human is wired is to try to create on your own. I think it might be default wired into us, because it could be wrong, but for me, I stopped doing it after it got really painful. Right? I tried to create on my own. My default was to kind of create on my own, and then I was like horrified and humiliated, and I lost $30,000, and I couldn't even sell this $9 product to a realtor. She's like, no, I don't want to buy that. And then I saw her sign a $70 check for her alcohol, and I was like, God, she just spent $70 on freaking alcohol and she won't buy my product for $9 that will change her life. Doesn't she know what she really needs? And then, you know, I was like, all right, this is way too painful, you know, so humiliating, that like the pain got so great that I wanted to start to listen. So I wanted people to know that, like, if you feel like you're pushing a boulder uphill, you are likely pushing a boulder uphill, and just take your hands off it and roll down it. And you'll get so much momentum rolling down that hill that you'll fly up to the top of the next mountain if you keep listening, possibly. That being said, I don't want to ignore Andrew's question. So, Andy, any comments there? And then what's your answer to Andrew's question?
Yeah, we can go both directions with this, or one or the other. But it makes me go back to this idea of mindfulness, Andrew, which you talk about a lot. The idea of true mind. And you're really into meditation. You just finished your time at the monastery. Ditto for me, and it makes me wonder how much of a role that plays in our ability to let go and be in the flow of things and listen, as opposed to getting caught up in our head of like, we should do this, we should go after that. Aren't people going to want that? Andrew, what's your experience been with your meditation practice in general, and then how has that affected your ability to be with customers and listen to them?
It helps me understand that when I want to talk to someone, well, remember I told you how excited I was to talk to these guys today, that I got up at 2:00 or then 3:00 and I worked on it. Well, there was also another part of me that said, I hope that they need to reschedule because I'm not ready. That when they sent me a text message before I actually hit the button to see the text message, before I hit the icon on my phone to get it, I said, oh, maybe they need to reschedule. Then it's on them that I can't do it today. Then I have to do it another time and I get more time to prepare, but it's not my fault. And meditation helps me be aware of my thoughts and tune out the ones that aren't helpful. And so that's a thought that is not helpful that I need to learn to tune out. I need to remember, I actually enjoy talking to these people. I need to remember it's a conversation that they want, that they're going to be helped by, that I'm going to get excited about. It's a good group of people who are friends, who want me to succeed. And also I want to succeed. I want to do well. And if I need to get through even enemies, I will sit through a room full of enemies and let them like say anything to me. So that's how meditations help me. It's helped me be aware of my thoughts. Is that what happened to you, Dane?
A lot. Yeah. That and some. That and some.
What's the extra part?
I feel like through mindfulness, I found the Holy Grail of life within mindfulness.
How do you mean?
Yeah, I experienced like the end of suffering for myself. You know, I experienced like almost all of my suffering was by adding thoughts to things. So I just stopped adding thoughts. I don't stop adding thoughts. I don't really get a choice over my thoughts to an extent, you know? Like if you read there's a book called The Illuminated Mind. It's like probably one of the greatest gifts to humanity, that book. This guy applies the science of Buddhism and brain science and meditation and like all this path to follow for meditation. And he talks about how your mind, the unconscious mind chooses what you think about based on a certain set of criteria. And you're like, oh God, that sounds like a pretty powerful supercomputer that's choosing my thoughts and I don't really have a choice. And it prioritizes certain thoughts over certain things based on certain feelings, et cetera, et cetera. So if you don't really have a choice of your thoughts to an extent, then it'd be nice to kind of like start monitoring them like you were doing. So when I say that the end of suffering for myself, it's when I'm breathing, I'm not adding thoughts to my experience, and I just experience directly without even feeling. It's pretty, I feel a little unsure of how to articulate it any more clearly than that. Is that landing for either of you, or does it seem unconcrete?
It does make sense to me. I do feel like I can't fully control my thoughts, but I can avoid getting carried away by the wrong ones. Like I could, as I was shaving this morning, I let my beard really grow over the last few days over the weekend. And this morning I really wanted to shave it. And as I was shaving, it took freaking ever. Just like I have to use the trimmers to cut down the heavy ones and then use the electric the closer electric to shave down the rest. And then I use a razor from Harry's to get even closer. So there's a lot of time just standing there thinking. I can't even listen to a podcast because it's so loud. And at that time, I thought, here's how I can actually apologize to my friend who invited me to his office for not doing such a good job. Like, it may not work out. Here's how I could explain it. Or this is not really the right environment for me. I saw those thoughts coming through. I could have allowed myself to just get lost in them without even noticing that I was making excuses and setting myself up for failure. By being aware of them and knowing that I could shift my attention to something else, I kept myself from walking into the room feeling and looking like a loser, which you've seen people do. And so that's the beauty of meditation, that in meditation, they don't train you to just breathe for the sake of breathing. They teach you to do it so that when your mind starts to say, well, why am I sitting here? What if I do this? Don't I need to do that tomorrow? You come back to the breathing and you learn that you can control where your mind goes, or at least direct it a little bit. That's a huge, huge help. Dane Tran is asking, who's the author of the book that you were talking about?
I don't know. It's weird. I think it's a kind of a.
What is it called? The End of Suffering?
No. That'd be the book that I would write, since I'm a marketer. I would probably write The End of Suffering, since I'm a marketer. But this guy's not a marketer, so he called his book The Mind Illuminated.
It's so fascinating, Andrew, because I imagine if you're not aware of those, what you would do if you weren't aware of the thoughts and you're having those happening, but they're happening unconsciously underneath the scene or underneath the surface. And then, you either go in and bomb, or you end up doing something to sabotage it. And I think that happens a lot with entrepreneurs when they're getting started, is they have these thoughts happening underneath the surface that affects what they're doing. And they're not.
And people pick up on them, and you're training them on how to respond to you. That if you're on a phone with someone and you look like you don't belong there and you seem apologetic, they're going to say, well, maybe this person doesn't belong here, and will be a little repulsed by you and will be waiting for the call to be over. And people pick up on this stuff. And so I think it's important to shift to what you want, to stay focused on the thoughts that you want in your head. By the way, I'm going to take my shirt off. They actually turn off the heat in this building, turn on the air conditioning in this building after hours. And
I think we should stay silent while everyone watches Andrew.
Hilarious.
I'm keeping the t-shirt on. Christopher, you've come here for Scotch night. Here's why I want to talk a little bit about the money. I know it's not about the money, but it's about the money. For me, anyway. Maybe other people have no interest in money. I care about money. I love money. And here's one of the reasons why I think it's important. I think as we're going into these meetings and we're a little bit hesitant and our mind wants to go to, well, you don't have to be here. You don't need to be here. I think it's important to redirect it towards some of the things that you want. And it's okay to say, I want more money. It's okay to say, I want more stuff in my life. To me, I think it is. And it's okay to walk in there saying, if I do well in this, here's the great life that I have. Because what I call it the true mind, the part of our mind that focuses on the stuff that is true, that we want in our lives, that we welcome in our heads. The countermind will set us up. Well, the countermind is the part of our mind that screws us up. The countermind will send us into these phone calls, these, what do you call them, Dane? The discovery phone calls? The idea extraction calls?
Yeah.
The countermind will send us into ideas extraction calls saying you are going to fail. This will not make sense. Go back to your job. Go back to your previous life. It is going to project a future of failure on you if you make these phone calls, or even if you don't, because it's going to say that's who you are. It's up to us to actively, with energy, say, no, that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on where I'm going. I want to focus on where I want to be, and to shift direction to those thoughts that are true, useful, and wanted. I make no hesitation about the fact that you mentioned that previous company. A large part of it was I spent thinking about how much money I wanted, how I wanted to be able to do anything with my life because of it. And I think that kept me positive and optimistic, that if I was making a sales call with someone who said, why should I spend this much money with you? I could own that conversation, at least own my thoughts and my expression in that conversation, because I knew what I wanted in the long term. And I think that fires us up. And so I think that is an important thing to talk about.
And this actually resonates very deeply with me. Sorry, Andy.
No, go ahead, man.
For whatever reason, I was gifted with this ability, Andrew, when I was like 22, 23, is I didn't have a lot of thoughts in business. I just did, like when I say the end of suffering for me is not adding thoughts. And it's profound, that sentence, for myself to say, and this is just from my experience. When I was starting businesses, I wasn't adding thoughts. Like, I was like, all right, I'm going to call company and sell a business. Well, like, what's my script? What am I going to say? What's going on here? What's going to blah, 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 for you, like 10 thoughts before you do one phone call. I wouldn't have those. And if I did, so what would happen is I wouldn't have thoughts, and then I'd have debilitating thoughts come in, right? The countermind, as you would say. What about competition? What about this? What about that? If I ever had any thought that didn't serve me, I just booted it right out, and I just kept going. I didn't have a lot of thoughts. I experienced a tremendous amount of success in business on what my definition.
Did you have no thoughts at all, or did you go into? I remember asking Gary Vaynerchuk in my first interview with him. I said, "Do you ever pump yourself up by repeating affirmations?" And he said, "No, I never would do anything like that." And I thought, okay, great. This actually makes sense to me. I don't do affirmations either. And then I said, "So what were you doing? Why did you want to go out on Conan, for example?" And he said, "You know what? Before I went on Conan, I said, I have to do this for the whole blogosphere, for the whole internet world. Because if I go out there as a guy who made it by being big on YouTube, by being a blogger, and I do well on Conan, I tell the media world, the people who made it online, deserve a place here in this forum. I'm doing this for all of us." That's what he said. Now think about the thought process. He wasn't aware, even in his conversation with me when we were analyzing his thoughts, he wasn't aware that that was his thought, but that was a true mind thought. That was a positive thought that fired him up. And if you go back and watch that thing, to this day, it holds up his appearance there. So the reason, I don't mean to be so fired up at you, by the way, Dane, fired up on this topic, but I'm genuinely curious the way I was with him. When you used to make these calls, when you used to do these things that you did, were you completely thought free, or were you in this positive, optimistic, I can do anything type of thought process?
Wow. It's humbling to just revisit. I think I'm in the center of a storm of thoughts, and I'm just in the center and I'm just moving forward, but there's a storm with a bunch of thoughts. So
it's not like the thoughts are going through you. There's just a whole lot of thoughts, some good, some bad. You're not allowing them in your head. They're just around you.
Well, this is basic, like in the Illuminated Mind book, which is like, again, like one of the greatest gifts to humanity, it's called disidentification. You have a thought, I can't do this, and you identify with the thought. If you just watch this, like you're in the center and there's a storm of all these thoughts, you see them coming, but none of them are yours. There are thoughts coming from you, but you don't identify with any of them. I was just in the center of the storm of thoughts, but I was able to continue trudging forward. And it can be pretty debilitating thoughts, but I just kept moving forward. I didn't necessarily I probably had affirmations, but I couldn't remember. When, this is very, very, very scary for myself to consider, and I think for you too. Gary Vaynerchuk says, "No, I don't do affirmations." And then you caught him doing affirmations.
I don't know that it was explicitly affirmations, but he was definitely doing something to himself to get himself in the right frame of mind.
It could have been a language breakdown. My bias, because of my own world, is to project all over Gary and say that it disturbs me how unconscious my behavior can be. Like, it disturbs me. Like, literally, I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that's why I did that." And it disturbs me how little I know about myself at times. So, yeah.
So Dr. Doug was asking, where is this going? Here's where it's going. This is a key part of business success, I think. I've seen this happen to people where they change the way they think about the world, they change the way they control their own minds, and they see different results in their lives. And I think that's critical. I think that once you do that, you start to see results in other aspects of your life too. You change the way you think, and you start to finally realize, you know what? I don't need to eat such crappy food. I don't need to be the person who's resisting exercise. That you start to see these crap thoughts all over your life, and you start to learn how to resist them. I don't think entrepreneurship, I don't think business is just about money, though I love money, and I've said that a million times. I think it's about becoming a better person through doing it. And by recognizing your thoughts and finding a way to deal with them properly, you you not only grow a business, but you then transfer that knowledge to the rest of your life, to your relationships, to your health, to your other interests. To me, that's exciting. I've seen people who haven't done that. They end up screwing up. They end up screwing up because they do really well in business, but they're not recognizing that they have all these insecure thoughts about women, about relationships, and then they end up in a bad relationship because some woman loved them, and then because they're in a bad relationship, their whole business ends up suffering and the whole thing comes crashing down. You see it a lot. You see it a lot. It's just not the kind of thing that I want for my life. Or if you're here, my guess is that it's not the kind of thing that you guys want for your lives too.
I remember, you know, there were a lot of business mentors I had growing up. But there were a few business mentors I had that had the relationship dialed as well. And there's so many people who in their 40s are divorced and, you know, on their second or third marriage. And it was just, I think part of the reason is because you can get so obsessed with just the numbers and the outcome without actually being connected to the thoughts and what's actually happening. And the money thing, I loved what you said, Andrew, and I want to go back to that for a moment because I had a coach one time tell me, she said something really profound. She said, most entrepreneurs don't grow their business not because they're not talented or capable of it, but because they don't know what they would do with the extra money. And so the motivation they had early on to drive the business and to get something drove them to a certain point, and then they get to a point and they plateau. And I thought that was really fascinating, where it's actually like the money can be a motivator at some level to keep you doing new and exciting things that are going to push you through those hard times and making those phone calls that you don't actually want to hop on the phone and do sometimes.
Yeah.
As Dr. Doug was asking, where is this going? I would actually ask him to track where this is going. And if you see, you'll notice a pattern. We started off talking about finding pain and how important it is to find what people are upset about. You could have probably have shut off this interview within the first 10 minutes and gotten a life-changing nugget right there in terms of just finding what people are upset about. We then shifted to talking about how to do that. And then we then shifted into why it's so difficult to do. And now we're talking about relationships and how those could fall apart if you're not mindful of your thoughts. If you see, they're actually all quite related, and they're related by a missing link that I don't think we talked about, but I think, you know, Andy or Andrew, you can dispute it. Why don't more people talk to customers? Why is it so hard? Well, a lot of us are pretty interpersonally challenged, and it's pretty hard for us to sit in connection, to sit in intimacy with another human. And I think, you know, the interpersonal dynamics of especially in Western culture in America, it's hard. You know, what are you talking to a stranger for? You know, strangers are dangerous. What, you gonna go talk to a guy at a company and just ask and tell him that you care? Like, you know, we've got a society of people that I've seen from my world that are really all afraid of loving each other, staying in their shell, and we're all pretty interpersonally challenged. And so that's one of the things that we had a student in the foundation once. She would make her cold calls. She didn't like cold calls, so what she would do is she would send emails to set up phone calls. And so it's like, all right, you know, you can do that, and that's fine. And so it worked well for her, and she'd have a great initial conversation. She'd discover a painful problem, and then when it came to follow up for the next phone call, she would stop. She would just stop. She wouldn't pursue the conversation further. And upon digging deep with her, we found that she thought that if people really got to know her, that they would see that she's a fraud. And so she stopped. You know, and there's a ton of unconscious interpersonal dynamics that go into play when you're connecting with a stranger, when you're connecting with a partner. And I think those all come to the surface when you're doing this stuff, which is even more important why I say you should do it, so you can face these things. Warner, you look like you got something to say.
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. That's the end of my thought. So that's how I see it all related. The phone is so fun. Like, it's the initial call, it's ringing, it's talking, but then when you're like 2 or 3 minutes in, like once you're connected with the person, that's generally the most exciting part for me. But it's that whole first 3 minutes that's kind of the agonizing part. I mean, I hope that's a helpful reflection for the Dr. Dub on this. Andrew, I'm most inspired on these calls when I hear you tell me about your most exciting stories of the guys who hit their head against the wall and then turn the other way. Do you have any more of those that you think are useful to share? Because I think that will be the context for those of you that know Andrew Warner is going to be one of the mentors in the foundation teaching this class. And I think the context that Andrew you can keep bringing people back to is this theme that you've seen across the 1,000 interviews you've done. Of those 1,000 interviews, are there any other really moving examples?
Yeah, this guy Joe Montaniel. Never heard of him. Didn't realize how big a company he had because so private. But he's a guy who did really well on Wall Street, and he would go out on Friday and Saturday night and try to get into clubs and couldn't get in. And he said, why aren't these guys letting me in? I have the money to buy a table. I have the money to buy drinks here. They should allow me in. He said, they probably just don't know who's waiting in line. If only they could sell tickets, even expensive tickets to their clubs, they would sell to people like me. So he created software that allowed clubs to sell tickets to people who could afford to get them. And a couple of clubs bought into it, but the thing never really went anywhere because it wasn't a big problem for the clubs that, douchebag guys who work on Wall Street had to wait in line. That wasn't their big pain point. And to his credit, he suffered, but he accepted it. He went to work for Rob at LivePerson. And Rob, I remember interviewing the founder of LivePerson. He's such so aware of his thoughts. He talked to me about depression, talked to me about therapy, talked to me about how he nearly lost it all, how he had to sleep on the couch of his office, and how he turned things around and then took LivePerson public by understanding his thoughts. So this guy ended up working for Rob and really learning from him. One of the things he learned was to go and understand your customers. So he actually went to his customers and said, look, you can see I'm a hardworking guy. I wrote this code. No one used it. But you see that I show up, that I work hard. Would you allow me to come to your club and just watch behind the scenes how you guys do business so that I can learn from you? He didn't want to make phone calls. He wanted to live with his people. And a few of them said, yeah, sure. So he brought some cupcakes. He went in. He watched what was going on behind the scenes as these clubs were getting ready for the big night, as the big night happened. And what he noticed was this. Before people were let in the door, the guys at the club started going through their emails, looking to see who asked to come in, Googling the people who asked to come in to see, are they cool people? Are they the kind of people we want in our club? Will they enhance the vibe or detract from it? And then they made a list of the people who they wanted in the club. And they made an actual list, paper and pen, and they gave it to the bouncer. And the bouncer then had to keep track of the people as they came in to see who was on the list and who wasn't. Really tough process. If anyone out here can code even a little bit or hire a developer, you can solve that pretty quickly. And so he said, look, I think I could solve this for you guys. I think what I can do is just use Facebook and LinkedIn and actually automatically pull up the faces of the people who are applying to come in and their names and give you a sense of who's who. Would that be helpful? Would that actually solve your problem if we could do it easily and give you a digital readout of who's there so you can keep track of who's actually coming in? They said, yeah. So he charged them and he created it and it actually took off. Go figure. This thing that hadn't worked for a long time, suddenly with this one little insight started to take off. I said, what'd you do next? He said, well, I just kept building on it, kept understanding their problems. And it turns out that restaurants had similar problems. They didn't know who to allow in. Do you just allow in the person who happened to call up first, or do you allow in the person who's best? So now they use this software. It's called 7 Rooms. Anyone can use it. And you can see some of the best restaurants in the world use it, because what they want to know is, who are we letting in here? Not just the first person to call. They want to give priority to people who are repeat customers, and they need software that tells them that. So if I call up and I say, I'm Andrew Warner, they want to know, did Andrew come here before? Well, if Andrew's been here 5 times before, let's let him in. If he treated our staff well, let's let him in. If Andrew lives a few blocks away, let's let him in, even if he's not the first person to call up for the table, because if he lives nearby, he's going to create a good vibe here because he cares about the community, cares about the restaurant. He'll keep coming back, and so we'll get repeat business from him. And he created the software. He told me what the revenue was. He asked me not to say it. We're talking over $1 million a year in revenue for this thing that was languishing, that was painful, that he had to go and get another job and humble himself to some degree, to a point where entrepreneurs don't feel comfortable doing it. But what he learned was you have to be in the lives of your entrepreneurs. So we talk about getting on the phone. Think about what he had to do. He didn't just make phone calls. He walked in hat in hand and said, I failed, but I want to learn from you. Can I sit in your office and just watch silently? That takes a little more guts, but look at the payoff. And over, we see people who do this stuff in my interviews, over 1,000 of them. Not every single person did this process, but when they did it, you can see a much more methodical process, a much more likely success. Nothing's 100%. It's still a tough process, but it makes more sense. It works more reliably. And so I got tons of these stories, and that's one of them. And that's one that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, thanks. It feels really good to hear.
Yeah, it feels good to do that. To imagine him sitting there, all these people suffering, trying to go Google, trying to do things in a painful way, and he solves their problem. Even if he didn't create a huge business success, the fact that he could do that for those people means a lot more than just flinging another piece of software in the world and saying, please love it, please buy it.
There's a whole different energy of like, I can imagine walking into this guy's business. He's like, yeah, we got 7 rooms, we got this. And when you'd sit with him, my story based on all my own projections again is be sitting with a guy who seems to be a very, very servant-based leader. It's like, well, no, it's not about my genius. It's not about my ideas. It's not about my experience. It's not about my credentials. It's about how well I'm actually able to serve the person I'm talking to, you know, versus the sort of worship that might happen for like a Zuckerberg, who's like, oh, this guy who created Facebook, if only could come up with a great idea, versus you sit with a guy who's got a 7-figure, 8-figure, whatever business. And you're like, well, how do you do it? And he's like, well, I just try to serve people as much as I can. So, you know, what I hear the theme is just, you know, hoping to maybe enact and give people permission to be of service to others. And with the 3 minutes on the hour, I just want to say in my world that I think the foundation is a really great place to teach you how to find markets, how to engage, how to interact, how to start those conversations, and how to serve people. I think we're one of the few places in the world that really have a completely abundant process, because it's so meta, to help encourage people to do this. They can create businesses where they get to act from a place of service and generate a profit.
Yeah.
And Andrew, you've told 3 stories, and every time you tell a story, you're such a good storyteller. I freaking love. I mean, I would probably listen to you tell like 20 stories, and at the end of it, man, I got to go find people's problems. And I've been teaching this. I've been teaching this for 5 years, and I'd still be like, man, Andrew's got a really good point, you know. So thank you. What I like about the
foundation is seeing people do it together. I think that there was one time in my life where I actually made real hardcore cold calls. I actually would call in and sell the New York, I forget what newspaper it was, San Francisco Chronicle, that's what it was, from New York. I used to do it after school in high school. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't talk to anybody. But I was surrounded by a room full of people who were all cold calling to sell the San Francisco Chronicle. And I get to see what was working for one person. And I get to see who was slacking. And I wouldn't want to be the slacker. I'd want to be more like the guy who's doing it. And to be in that environment, watching other people do it, got me to actually make phone calls and learn a lot about sales. And what I like about the way that I saw the foundation in the rounds that I saw was it's a bunch of people working together on it. And you get to see, well, that guy's really a straggler for a reason. I don't want to be like him. That's something I'm going to fight against. And that guy's doing it really well. Or she's actually committed and working on it. I want to be more like that. And you get to model the people you want to be like and who are surrounding you without even putting a conscious effort into it. You just naturally do it. There you go.
Beautiful. Andrew, why'd you want to get involved with teaching this time around?
I wanted to see the magic and how it happened. There's so many people who I met who are Mixergy fans, who are people who are part of my world in one way or the other, who would identify themselves as members of or graduates of the foundation. And I thought, look at this. There's something they're so proud of that they are bringing up as a self-identifying point. Like someone might say, I am also a Christian. I am also an engineer, right? It's a part of who they are. If you're an engineer, it's a part of who you are, if you're whatever your religion is. And even after they were done, even if it frankly didn't get them the riches that they wanted when they came in, they still got so much out of it that it was a part of their identity. I frankly wanted to see, how are you guys doing it? What is it that you're doing? And your process is so in line with what I've learned in Mixergy. I want to see how you guys are implementing it. And so I want to see it. I want to experience it for the same reason that people are a part of it. They want to see it. They want to experience it.
Beautiful. We're stoked to have you be a part of it for this go around.
Thanks.
So if any of you are interested, if you guys want to be a part of this class in the foundation, you'll have the 3 of us twice a week for 6 months with you, doing various Q&A sessions, various talks throughout the 6 months. If you're interested, there's an apply button below this video. Go ahead and click the apply button and fill out an application. And on Wednesday night at the end of the after party, we'll be opening up to new students for next year's class.
I say this, if we have anyone who's part of this conversation who happened to stay up, it's 7 o'clock my time, it's 10 o'clock on the East Coast, it's all kinds of crazy late for a lot of people. If you're here, you really want to do well. If you're here and you end up applying for and getting into the foundation, I would love to set up private phone calls with you just for the people who are here at this time. Is that possible for me to do?
Totally.
Here's a secret word. Andrew, I was there, right? Just tell me that and we'll set up private phone calls. I'd love to do 2 calls at least, where maybe some point in the middle or maybe towards a third of the way through the program and some point later on, we have private conversations where I get to see what's working for you, what's not working for you, where are you stuck, where do you feel like the world is bullshit, where do you feel like you've gotten something that's really magical and you want to expand on it. I want to have those private conversations with you where we talk about anything. I won't record it. You're welcome to record your side if you want. And we work together on it because I want to work with people who are really committed. I want to get to know and be a part of people who are really committed. Guys like Wade, who reached out to me, really committed people. I'm so proud that they were in my life, that I got to even have a little bit of influence on them. I'm proud of, and that's what gives me meaning. So if you're here, I know that you're committed. I want to be committed to you, and I'd love to have at least 2 private phone calls with you. And by phone calls, I mean let's do video so we can really chat and do some screen share and stuff.
Beautiful, man. Such a generous offer. So if you're interested, make sure you make note of that. We'll follow up after card open with you on that piece. Dane, any final words before you're up?
Andrew takes the cake.
Thanks, guys. Where's like the fist bump emoji?
Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.